grew up in a house. The address was 153 South Broadway. She grew up near the harbor. She belonged to a slave owner whose name was James Noble. James Noble had children, but he was also ran a butter depot. He was a butter dealer. She worked for him in this row house. And most likely she lived in the attic. And she served that family. Now, as she grew up, her master's wife, whose name was Mary, was awfully mean to her, always pressing her and prodding her and pushing her. 16, 17 years old, pushing her. And her release was often to go to the window and look out. And as she looked out at the marketplace below her, she would see slaves being sold. She would see them being paraded up on a pedestal and men having them stripped down, pushing them, poking them, prodding them, and deciding if they want to buy them or not. During this time, a good field hand could run as much as $1,200. And every day she watched a slave. Her master would send her out into the market. And as she went out into the market, one particular day, as she's walking along, she sees him. A man who is strong and virile. A man who has smooth tongue. Who was a quick talker, a fast talker, and probably talked a little bit too much, but he could talk, and he saw her. He looked at her, and he smiled, that smile. See, he had a scar on the side of his face that went down to his lip. His name was William Adams. And when William saw her, he knew that was his wife. So he tried to speak to her, but she ran off the first time. You know how it is. The second time, he gets a little bit of conversation before she leaves. And before you know it, whenever she came to the market, she found where he was. He was a free man. And he worked as a barber, but often during the day, he worked for the taverns, and he would take and open up oysters and shell things for the taverns. And she talked, and he talked. They fell in love, and he proposed. He looked at her and says, "Will you marry me?" Well, she loved him. She liked the way he talked. She liked the way he moved. She liked the ripples in his muscles. And she wanted to marry this man, but she knew that she was a slave. And that if they had children, those children would belong to the nobles. And she could not bear to see her child up on that block being poked and prodded. So she told him, "I cannot marry you. As long as the air that I breathe is the breath of a slave, I cannot marry you." He began to plot a plan. They say he left and went to New York where his mother lived, a free black woman. They say during that time, she decided that now was the time. Now was the time to leave. Have you ever loved somebody so much that you can't bear to live without them? She wanted to be with this man. They say the Quakers who had a heart, who were known as friends of truth, who were abolitionists and who wanted to help concoct a plan along with William to make her free. Down, perhaps even in that butter depot is where they met. She packed some of her fine clothes. Although she was a slave, they did dress her well. They packed clothes. They packed just a little bit of food and just a little bit of water. And she found herself getting inside a sea chest, a sailor's chest. The lid closed down and locked her in. As she was in there breathing no light, no room, knowing that if she was going to see her love again, she would have to endure the pain of 18 hours trapped in this box, this tomb. Each hour, roughly. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the men picked up the box and carried it down to the riverboat, over the cobblestone streets of Broadway, down to the river's edge where they put her in. The men took her and they strapped it tight to make sure that it wouldn't fall over. All the time, her heart wondering if she would be caught. What if the chest had rolled over and someone would have found her? What if the nobles realize she's missing and come after her? Over and over and over, she waits and she waits. 18 hours. She travels by riverboat to Philadelphia. In the middle of the night, William Adams' mother had made the trip on this riverboat. Now, as black people, you weren't allowed to go inside, but you could stay on the deck. In the middle of the night, her mother goes and she loosens up the ropes just a little bit. And she lifts up the crate just enough to give some fresh air for just a moment. Leah reaches her hand out, and her soon-to-be mother-in-law touches her hand. Though they never speak, they utter a prayer together, asking God to help them on the journey. This only lasts for a moment before she has to close it and tighten up the ropes. 18 hours trapped in a box has been declared to be like someone trying to cut off their hand or gouge out their eye. It is that painful. You can't eat. Her stomach is rumbling. She drinks very little because she doesn't want to eat or drink to make it worse. Finally, they reach Philadelphia. And the box is taken up and moved to an abolitionist's house by the name of William Steele. And at William Steele's house, they open it up. And out comes Leah, like a caterpillar leaving its shell and becoming a butterfly. For the first time in her life, she breathed in freedom. From Philadelphia, she was taken to Elmira, New York, where her husband-to-be is waiting. And there, in Elmira, just like they wanted, they were married. They lived in a community called Slabtown, which was actually a pretty nice neighborhood for free blacks. I wish I could tell you the story had a happy ending. 3 years after they were married, Leah became sick. She died. But she never regretted the 18 hours that she spent in a box, not just for love, but for freedom. 18 hours that gave her 3 of the most happiest years of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't know how long we have to love, but don't waste it. Don't treat it as it's just you. Realize that people were willing to give their lives for love. You can actually Google the house that Leah grew up on. It's actually, you can do the Google Maps. It's 504 now. So the street has changed. South Broadway. It's a green row house. Now it's a nightclub. But her legacy lives on. The story of her love never